Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe, from Cape Cod to Cancun, from Vegas to the Vatican. I'm your host, Jeff Dawson of East Coast Sports Investors, The Breakfast Bankroll. And generally on Wednesdays, we have this special guest, our co-host, Mr. Dan Alexander at Newbie Talks, where we're talking Premier Lacrosse, opening odds, angles, under-overs. This guy has more insight than 99.9% out there, and he talks, gives us edges, and we cash tickets. But we are a day in advance because tomorrow is someone's birthday, so we are giving him a early birthday gift, and his gift to us is hosting the show today. So without further ado, a good friend of ours, Mr. Dan Alexander. Danny, my brother, what is up?
Jeff, it's good to be back with you, man. I missed you. And yeah, what a nice present. I'm channeling my inner Sherapan. I went with the hat today because I was running around like a crazy guy, and taming these locks doesn't come easy. So all ready to go. Happy to be back. It seems like, I mean, the Premier Lacrosse League seems like every other week is a bye week, but that allows me to dive into some numbers. But it makes me miss when we get to have our conversation. So a day early, a day late, I don't care. I'm just glad to be on with you and the ECSI crew.
And it's funny because we were doing these weekly, and then we get up to the All-Star break, and then, which was good, able to talk about the All-Star game and set us up for what's in advance, the last couple weeks, the playoffs, and then hopefully leading up to a live stream with the championship, maybe some in-game wagering and all that good stuff. And then, again, it's every other week. And so, it's like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But as you said, this time gives us more opportunity to dig in. We've been talking since day one. Has the market caught up? Has it not caught up? It's definitely building steam, viewership, people watching. It's the dog days of summer. This is perfect timing. And so I kind of get what they're doing. Thoughts with this scheduling? Thoughts of does it help? Does it hurt? I mean, we're in some must-win situations this weekend, which we're going to dive into. Thoughts moving forward this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword because the reasoning behind it was, they didn't want to go like toe-to-toe with any other sporting events. I don't know how tough it is nowadays, Jeff, to go toe-to-toe with the Olympics. I know it isn't, even when I was a younger guy, definitely when you were a younger guy, the Olympics aren't what they used to be. So I don't know if their planning was to not compete with the Olympics or what. But it does seem like, and I talk with my buddies, whether they're lacrosse fans, whether not, I try and get people more interested in the Premier Lacrosse League. And then they're like, all right, what do we got this weekend? What are our bets this weekend? I said, well, I can give you some bets. You're going to have to wait 3 weeks to place them, though. And you got to wait until the lines actually come out for them. So I think it's leaving you with a good product on the field. But as far as, you want to push that stone at the top of the hill and let it keep rolling, and let it snowball is the saying that people say. So I think it hurts that momentum. But hey, if it's letting the players rest a little bit, it's given us the great product, the great parity that we've seen thus far in the Premier Lacrosse League. I'll take it. I'm just looking forward to a full slate, full betting opportunities. I mean, you and I have talked about this at length, as they're doing great with what they have so far. Only third year in the league for the Premier Lacrosse League. It's only going to keep getting better. And, unfortunately, when trying to find some edges, it's only getting better for the odds makers making these lines, because it hasn't been just, look at the board and auto play some stuff. You really have had to dive a little bit deeper as we've gone on in the season to find some angles that are a little bit more advantageous, rather than just liking a game because you like the game.
We talked this morning on the Breakfast Bankroll about the difference between the MLB grind, the 162 games, the day-to-day just wear and tear. And as we're getting closer now to football, where initially you have the college games on Saturday, you have the NFL on Sunday, then of course we have the NFL on Thursday and on Monday and Thursday. As the season progresses, the MAC and some other smaller schools come on to ESPN on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The problem that we see with that is the people that are not the grinders in the world, the guys that are the action players, the guys that as we like to say, tend to get a little lazy, will not look through all the onions. They won't dig deep. They want it now. In football, it's like a mad dash to the weekend. Okay, I got 100 games on Saturday for college, and then I got the menu on Sunday. And the funny thing with the NFL menu is you got 8 games at 1 o'clock. You got 4 games at 4 o'clock, and then everyone's jonesing at 8 o'clock, and it's like, all right, when in doubt, bet the favorite and the over. Here, it's like, okay, you got the games sometimes on Friday, sometimes on Saturday, sometimes on Sunday. How can you tell the newbie, hey, guys, take a break. We're in our 3rd year here. This is what we're looking at. How can you maybe rewire them or tell them basically, give them some suggestions, Dan?
Yeah, I think the main thing is it's kind of similar in that NFL aspect that you don't have a midweek game here and there. So you really do get to dive into your numbers and have some good views and angles. I'm one of the people who preach, like, if you have a strong opinion, if you have something you truly believe is going to happen in a game, don't let the market agree with you or disagree with you. Like, get that play in early and maybe do it, a half unit size or just what people call pizza money. So at least you're getting the best number that you possibly potentially could get. Maybe the market will disagree with you and you can buck back and double down later in the week. But it is kind of similar in that NFL aspect. It's the same way as when I handicap NFL games. I hit the openers. I have the lines that I'm going to make on these lacrosse games. As the games on Sunday, Saturday, Friday, as they're finishing up, I'm already taking the information we learned in that game and trying to extrapolate that into the next week's slate, or in the PLL's case, the next, a month down the line when the games happen again, I'm diving in. So I already have my numbers, so you hit the ground running. I think, and, I listen to your show all the time. The guests that you have come on kind of preach the same thing is, don't wait until the information is there. Have your own idea of what your information is, and sometimes it'll be right, sometimes it'll be wrong, but don't let the market tell you what your opinion is. Have an opinion and let the market adjust maybe what that opinion is, or make you feel stronger, or maybe you want to play off something. So I think in the aspect of how that kind of works, the gearing up, it's very similar. And, I'm just one of those people. I know a lot of folks, the guy who I co-host Bet on Lacrosse with, he's one of those guys who likes to maybe have an opinion, but not put down any action until it gets a little bit closer and the market matures a little bit. That's just not my style of play. And I think, from the clients that you have to tailor what works best for your bankroll and what works best for how you like to bet these games. But, once you kind of find that formula, stick with that formula. Don't go jumping around the board. Don't go trying to reinvent the wheel. Find what works for you and stick with that. And I think that's what you guys do at ECSI. That's what I've learned from the shows that you've done with your guests. Find what works. You don't have to be an expert in everything. Find the one thing that you're good at and do it damn well, Jeff.
And that's probably the hardest part in our business and in our lanes is trying to rewire some of these people. This is what we do. This is what we've done now for 6.5 years. We're not the number 1 ranked sports investors according to Google first page for a reason. We're there. What we're doing is working. And a lot of times it just becomes to ego. It becomes to heart. Hey, I've been doing this for a long time, pal. I just want your picks. I don't need the BS and just move on. And the bottom line at the end of the week is this, are you looking to grind, profit, win and grin? Or is this just entertainment? Yeah. And that's the problem.
And I think part of it is, maybe I would say majority of recreational bettors are looking for that happy medium. You know what I mean? And that's where we come in. That's why we have to do the hard work, because let's be real, Jeff, a lot of people don't want to do the hard work, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you want action on a game, and you want that action to at least be informed. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to just be throwing darts at the board, which is why I think having folks who do that grind for you is so important, and it's only going to get bigger as sports betting gets bigger, because nobody wants to place a bet that they don't think is going to win. You know what I mean? Like, you're not just, oh, the people at DraftKings are so nice. I'm going to put this $300 bet and if it loses, hey, it's going to a great place. Nobody's doing that. You want to feel good about the bets that you're placing. And that's why, if you have a full-time job and you can't dedicate that time to it, that's why you have experts. That's why you have handicappers who will do that work for you. And, I think that's finding that perfect happy medium, because I'll admit, I love betting just because, when you have action on a game, when you have skin in the game, it's a lot more fun than when you're just watching. You know what I mean? So part of it is that kind of action, that kind of rush. But the other part is I love money. I think that everybody listening to this show probably enjoys some cash because, money talks. And at the end of the day, Jeff, that's what it's all about. So I think trying to find that happy medium for recreational sports bettors is one of the toughest things. And you get free information on this show daily. You get free information daily on Wager Talk Today and the things we do over at Wager Talk. That information is out there, and you can really save yourself some lead time on seeking some of those things out and getting that information so you can be an informed bettor, you can be an informed player, and still, be cashing tickets, having fun along the way, not just throwing darts at a board.
We're going to lead in here. Let's see if we can do this correctly, sir. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and I know some numbers have shifted, and it's probably not going to be the biggest here on the screen. I'm going to try to help everyone out here to the best of my ability. Your updated MVPs, we had talked about this, and you're coming down to crunch time. Correct me if I'm wrong. The final week of the regular season is this week, correct?
Say you're already learning so much. You know the whole entire schedule, even though it feels like we haven't had a game in 7 weeks. So, Jeff, you're already having a leg up on some folks. I'm glad you've been taking notes during our weekly sessions here.
And I tell you what, I follow all your links. I follow you guys. I listen to you guys' show. And yes, I am learning. I was the first to admit when I reached out to you. Hey, listen, I watched the game. I enjoy the game. We sometimes sneak up to Gillette when the Final Four was up at Gillette stadiums. I have a daughter at UConn. I follow the kids. I love the game. When it came to a sports betting purpose, I'm as green as it comes. And to have us to be able to provide this information and for me to learn. Hey, listen, when I don't know something, I always reach out and ask for help. I never did that a long time ago, but the older and wiser I've gotten, hey, listen, I don't know everything.
Exactly.
I can't be the ace in the hole for every sport because there's just too many sports to follow. So I've been taught to dig into what you do best at. And if there's other experts that are willing, like you just said a few minutes ago, to do the work for me, why can't I just watch you live? Why can't they come to us and listen and maybe cash a few tickets and say, holy shit, I didn't have to do any work. I listened to Dan and Jeff. I go to the Premier League. I go to Lax Playground. I listen, I learn, and I cash.
Well, and the thing is, the beauty of it is, maybe you find some of this. Sure, I would love it if you shared the word, follow at Bet on Lacrosse and share, retweet. But hey, even if you're just listening and you're taking the information we give you, you say it to your buddies. Isn't that just as fun as cashing a ticket as when you get to be the go-to guy? Oh, here's my guy. He gave me all these winners. So while we will take the accolades, we don't need it. As long as people are having fun, as long as people are listening, you don't have to tell them I gave you the play. You can tell them it's all yours. I won't stop you. Just thanks for listening. And I think to piggyback off of what you said there too, Jeff, a saying that I repeat, I don't know where I heard it first, but I think it's one of the truest things, especially in sports betting. Knowing what you don't know might be the most important thing you do know. Because everybody wants to be an expert in the NFL, and everybody wants to be an expert in the NBA. Everybody wants to be the guy, but it's impossible. There's not enough hours in the day to find edges in every single sport. Know what you don't know and go elsewhere for that kind of information, and it's only going to bolster your portfolio. I think that's the biggest tip outside of bankroll management that I give all the time to prospective new sports bettors is you're not an expert in everything. You're never going to be an expert in everything. Know what you don't know. That could be the best thing that you do know, Jeff.
And that's one of our hardest parts in our lanes is the fact that when we're dealing with a new client, and I always say, hey, two things: you got to check your heart and your ego at the door. Let go of that wheel. Okay, let go of it. And that's the hardest part for these people, is to say, wow, okay, I got other guys doing the work for me. This is what they do. Maybe I should stop, listen, and learn, and kind of buckle up and enjoy the ride. It's like what we talk about, 156 golfers in the tournament, and you want to be the one to run to the window and pick that one guy out of the 156, hold it up and say, I told you so.
I'm a genius. I'm a genius. I got a needle in a haystack bet. Yeah, I'm the best in the world. I'll never get it, Jeff. That makes no sense to me at all.
No. So here's your MVP board. And again, I know the numbers are small. Anyone stick out? Anyone stand out from our talk a few weeks ago? Maybe someone that didn't get a skin in the game, that, you see some value or potentially a few swings here.
Well, I see a value on a ticket that you and I are holding when, about 3 weeks back, we talked about Lyle Thompson and the fact that the Cannons, even though their record hasn't been that great, still 2 games that they've only won heading into the final week here. He was all the way up at plus 750 when we talked about him. He's ticked down a lot. It's a valuable ticket that you're holding. He's now a 350 second odds-on favorite. Grant Ament of the Archers is still your favorite. To be honest with you, I don't understand why he keeps getting all the love. Like, he's an amazing player. Don't get me wrong. He's terrific. He maybe is one of the best facilitators alongside his teammate, Tom Schreiber, some of the best passing, some of the best just lacrosse IQ you'll ever see. But as far as most valuable, I find it hard with an offense that has, 5 guys scoring multiple goals per game to say that this is the one MVP of that team, because while he's maybe, you argue, the quarterback of the offense, I would be pretty surprised, unless the Archers end up winning the championship, which is a possibility, don't get me wrong, if Grant Ament does end up, just because I think there's some better narratives out there. And for better, for worse, when it comes to MVP voting, lacrosse isn't immune. I feel like you see it in every sport. Towards the end of a season, narratives are going to drive who wins the MVP more than the season-long stats. You know what I mean? And I think that that's no different in lacrosse. So Grant Ament, terrific player. He would be an all-star on any team, or any team in the country, any team in the world. I just don't know why he has been the consistent favorite all year long after Matt Rambo's injury happened. So I think Lyle Thompson, he has the narrative. Now, the fact is, you look at the record, 2 wins, hard for me to convince anybody an MVP of a league is on a team who's only won 2 games the entire season, right? So maybe something happens in the playoffs and he gains a little bit more steam, while the closing line value, so to speak, is attractive on that ticket. I just don't know if they've won enough games for that ticket to end up cashing for us, which is why some other names that we brought up in Jeff Teat, we had him at a ticket who was sitting around, 750, 800. He's down to 450. The thing that makes me so interested about him, Jeff Teat, your third odds-on favorite here, he's on the Atlas. It was a team who lost week 1. Everybody was saying they were rebuilding. Then Jeff Teat comes in. He was the first overall pick. We talked about this. He wasn't able to travel due to COVID restrictions. He's from Canada. When those restrictions were eased, he was allowed to rejoin the Atlas. So he's played fewer games than everybody on this board, and he's tied for the most overall points in the league with your top 3 names that are right there. So he's played fewer games, so that narrative is built in. He has just as many points, and since he's rejoined the Atlas, they failed to cover in all but 1 game. So the narrative is there. The stats are there. If Atlas continues this role, I think that's the guy who's going to end up taking it home. Either he or his teammate, who you could still grab at plus 1,000. So that's a 10-1 ticket. Brian Costabile, your 5th name that's on that list there. He as well is on the Atlas, and he's been cashing tickets for us like crazy on his over goals prop. He was sitting at 1.5 almost weekly. He's one of the best 2-point shooters in the league. So 1 ball goes off his stick, into the goal, 2 points, you cash the ticket. So he's been just blind money. They finally adjusted. His number this week is 2, so you're probably going to be looking at some more push situations. But I think Jeff Teat, Brian Costabile, members of the Atlas are likely going to be just with what we've seen this season. I think they're the most live candidates on this list. Rob Pennell, the Redwoods, 10-1. That's not a bad ticket. He's kind of fallen back to the pack. So I don't know if there's anything that screams out, grab a ticket now, other than Brian Costabile, 10-1. That could be a play and a nice ticket holding, because if they win, if he has another, 4-goal game, they're heading on into the playoffs as the 1 seed. Narrative there, stats there, and I think that's the most important thing. You need narrative, you need stats, and that's why I'm a little worried about our Lyle Thompson ticket, but that's why we were looking at Jeff Teat's way as well.
All right, before we dig into the games this week, I wanted to just move over to the standings so you can give us a narrative here on let me see if we can get this to work here. There's your overall standings right now. We will have the games. We're going to break down the games. We're going to get your picks soon. Standings, goals against, goals for, must-win situations. Obviously, this week you win and you're in. Take us through what the board looks like today and what we'll be looking for and expected for the weekend.
Yeah, there are just some massive games this weekend, and we're actually having a treat because you know how I explained how 2 teams every weekend have 2 games that they play in the weekend. Well, to make it even and make sure that everybody had 2 2-game weekends, this weekend we're actually going to have 4 teams who end up having 2 games. So we have 6 games on the slate this weekend. A terrific way to bring it on home. It'll be in Albany, New York, a great lacrosse hotbed. So it's going to be a lot of great games this weekend, and some massive matchups, because right there at the top, you have the Atlas, you have the Water Dogs, 6-2, 5-3. Funny thing is, both of those teams after week 1, where everybody was just throwing dirt on them, these teams are going to be awful. And now look at it. The parity speaks to itself. That's your 1 team and your 2 team right there. So those 2 teams are actually going to face off against each other, which is so funny because the cap of the weekend is going to be the Archers taking on the Whip Snakes. I bet you when they made that game be the final game of the season, they were thinking that was going to be for the 1 seed. It turns out a game on Saturday between an expansion team from last year and a team who traded away all of their good players. I put in air quotes in the Atlas. Those 2 teams are basically facing off for the 1 seed on Saturday afternoon. I don't think anybody saw that coming at the beginning of the season, unless you were listening to the Bet on Lacrosse podcast. My favorite team this year was the Atlas. My co-host Doug Greenberg of the Rundown's favorite team was the Water Dogs. Maybe we got lucky. Maybe we know what we're talking about a little bit. I'll let the viewers and listeners decide on that. But that's going to be a great matchup. Another huge matchup is at the bottom of this list here, where you see the Cannons at 2-6. You see the Chrome at 2-6. Neither of these teams have had the season that either of them really envisioned. It's the Cannons' first year in the PLL. So, maybe some growing pains were to be expected, but because of how they set this up, those are the 2 teams that have not clinched playoffs yet. 7 of these 8 teams on this list will be in the playoffs. The 1 seed's going to be having a first-round bye. All the other seedings work itself out. There is no reseeding following any of those rounds, so you may be seeing a situation following what happens in this Saturday game between Atlas and between Water Dogs, because if Atlas wins, they have 7 wins. Nobody can catch them. Signed, sealed, delivered, they're your 1 seed. If Water Dogs win, that's when it gets interesting. That's when it gets fun, because then you'll have the Water Dogs at 6-3. You'll have the Archers with 2 games this weekend. You'll have the Redwoods with 2 games this weekend. All the other teams having an opportunity that have those 4 wins to get to 6 wins. And then you're going to be looking at goal differential as the tiebreaker. So Archers, who were the team who was running away with it, they still have that huge eye-popping 25-plus goal differential. So if Atlas loses on Saturday, I lean with the Atlas in that game. I'm staying off it. I have some other looks, maybe total-wise and whatnot, that I'll be sharing with some of my Wager Talk subscribers. But the thing is that's going to be the game, because if Water Dogs pull off the upset, then everybody else is scoreboard watching. Then everybody else is looking at an opportunity of, oh my God, we could get this 1 seed. We could be the ones who have the first round bye now. That's going to be huge, but equally as huge, if Atlas does win, then you basically have teams on Sunday in the Redwoods, in the Archers, in the Whipsnakes who couldn't make up any ground, who would already be seated wherever they're going to be seated if Atlas wins. So it's a huge game. Friday's going to be great. You have the Archers and the Chaos taking each other on. You have the Redwoods and the Whipsnakes playing each other. But Saturday at 4:15, Saturday, August 14th, this coming Saturday, is the game that will decide who's a play-on team, who's a playoff team. Because if you're telling me on Sunday you could have potentially 3 out of the 4 teams playing that couldn't make any ground in the seedings, that's a playoff team. Or, you know, not a playoff in the playoff. I mean, a fade team, so to speak. If they have nothing to play for, maybe we get word that teams are resting. So Saturday at 4:15, I think it's really hard to handicap this weekend until that game goes off. And then I'll be scrambling to my mobile apps to say, oh my God, here's what we got to do. And that's when I'll be blowing up your DMs, Jeff, saying, hammer it now, max play here, max play there. Saturday at 4:15 is the game that will decide how strong or how weak your betting board potentially could be this weekend.
All right. So with that being said, let's go back over here. Here's your initial board for Friday. You talked about the Whipsnakes and Redwoods, the Chaos and Archers. We'll start Friday. Anything look appealing there?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is Friday, I feel a little bit more confident betting it because, like I said, it's so hard to handicap the rest of the weekend until you know in this number 1 game between Atlas and Water Dogs, what is the result there? So I do have some plays that I was looking at. As a matter of fact, both my best bet and my co-host, Doug Greenberg on Bet on Lacrosse, both of our best bets came from the same game. Luckily, we weren't on opposite sides of it. So we were looking at the Chaos and Archers game. And my buddy Doug, he was really liking the Archers -1.5. You've already seen that get steamed up. When we were looking at this board, it was closer to -120 to lay that 1.5. Now you're looking at 145. I don't know if there's enough to get me on that. However, steamed up as well is the over in this game. And it is a little bit concerning anytime you're playing an over because one of those names on that MVP list was Blaze Reardon. He's the goalie for Chaos. He routinely has like a 70% save percentage, and that's unheard of in lacrosse. Being a lacrosse goalie is one of the hardest positions. Being a goalie in any sport is tough, man. Let's be real. No parent ever wants their kid to say, Mommy, Daddy, I want to play goalie, because then you know it's heart palpitations for your whole entire life you're watching those games. But especially so in lacrosse, I mean, you're talking about 100-mile-per-hour shots from about 10 feet out. It's an insanely tough position to play, and Blaze Reardon is maybe the best goalie that we have ever seen. So it always worries me playing overs when he's in net. However, we saw an over hit between the Chaos and the Chrome a week ago, and the Chrome is an offense who struggled to get over 10 goals in nearly all of their game outside of 3 different games that they've played this season. So that's a team who has really struggled offensively, and even they were able to find the net in this kind of, this rush situation where everybody's trying to get into the playoffs, everybody's trying to find some advantageous positions, and Chaos's offense has also come around a lot more. We already know about the Archers offense. This is a team who has a 25-plus goal differential. They can light it up. They can score 20 points on their own. So I think that 23.5, that was an overplay that I love. That's my best bet for the week is the Chaos and Archers 23.5, looking over in that. I don't mind laying the 120 to do it because I think the bookmakers came into this weekend. When you look down the board, all but I believe 2 of the totals, unless they moved, have sat at 23.5, which at the beginning of the year, we were saying, oh my God, that's an auto play on the over. But it seems to me that the bookmakers have drawn a line in the sand. And this isn't only DraftKings. You're seeing this on BetMGM. You're seeing this where other lines are available. They've drawn a line in the sand saying, it's the playoff push. The playoff push is on. What happens when the playoff push is on in the NFL, when it's on in the NBA, when it's on in the NHL? You see games regularly going under because, especially in the NBA, where defense is sometimes at a premium, come playoff time, people are getting back on defense. People are taking charges, whereas in the middle of the season, before Christmas, they could care less. So I think the odds makers took an old convention in sports that come playoff time, defense wins championships. I think the fact that you're seeing 23.5s across the board here, basically outside of 2 different games, that's the odd makers saying, we think defense is going to be the star. And while maybe that will reign true, I think that's tough to be throwing out some low totals because, you're one run away from all of these games potentially going over. So I'm not saying blindly play overs, but I'm saying if you have stats to back it up, 23.5 is some of the best numbers that you can get in betting lacrosse. A lot of these totals have landed around 24, landed around 25. So anytime I'm seeing a 23.5, I'm already trying to talk myself into an angle that leads me to the over, though some under 23.5s have cashed this year. But that's a look that I just couldn't pass up on Friday night over in that Chaos Archers game, Jeff.
So basically, since we are numbers guys here, what you basically telling me is you let in with your co-host with the goal and a half to win by 2 or more. You're on the over. Have you guys been able to formulate anything as the season progressed on what these teams are, quote unquote, their team totals are averaging? So you're basically telling me here with that minus a goal and a half, minus 145, and the 23 and a hook over minus 120. What you're telling me here is you're expecting the Archers basically to score at least 13 goals to maybe 14, and the Chaos to probably come in between that 10 and 11 range?
Yeah, exactly that. I think if either of these teams get into the double digits, which I expect both of them to be able to do so, I think that this over is live. I mean, you could be looking at a situation. It depends, how a game starts, because that's why I wish more live betting opportunities, because when a game starts slow in lacrosse, it doesn't matter. The next half, you could see 20 goals scored in it. So here's the thing is, even though the Archers are the best defense in Premier Lacrosse, they're averaging 10 goals allowed per game. You scroll down that list a little bit longer, Chaos are 3rd worst in the league. They're averaging 12.3 goals allowed per game. So even if you're just going blindly, you look that up and you say, all right, let me do the rough match there, the rough math there, you're ending up with 22.3 is their average scores against between these two teams. And now you're talking about a playoff push. You're talking about guys who want MVP odds, while the odds makers are saying defense is going to be the star. I just have a feeling that in lacrosse, offense is way more often the star than defense, which is why when you can get some of those defensive teams, it's so great. So even with the Archers being your best defensive team this year, they're still allowing you to get into double digits. And if both of these teams get into double digits, I think that 23.5, there's no such thing as a lock, but I definitely will call it live because I just think it's a lot tougher to lock people down defensively, especially when guys have something to play for. And Friday night, they all have something to play for, trying to make up some ground.
And I love following your timelines here. At halftime, how does the overbetters feel? 4 minutes to go. How are you feeling now?
I live tweet a sweat like nobody else can. I let people into the home. I let people into the thinking. I'm as transparent as they're going to get. When I'm feeling it, I'll let you know. When I'm feeling down, I'll let you know too. And I think that's something tough to find in our industry, which is why I love what you guys do so much. I think transparency is one of the most important things in sports betting. Unfortunately, Jeff, it's maybe one of the hardest things to come by.
No doubt, no doubt. Who needs a sauna when I can just follow your timeline, post a few wages, and get a sweat? It's the best. Don't even have to leave the house.
We lose 5 pounds every game. It's the best fitness routine you possibly can find, man. Just sweat lacrosse bets. It'll get you every time, Jeff.
Saturday, I know you talked already. The Water Dogs and Atlas will set up the rest of the weekend. We do have 3 other games. We have then the Chrome Cannons, and then we have the 2 games on Sunday. So how are you taking a look into Saturday's games?
Yeah, I'm staying away from Saturday's games outside of the 7 o'clock game because, like I said, that game at 4:15 Eastern time in Albany between Atlas, between Water Dogs, that's really going to decide where I'm going forward with some of my bets. I'll be sharing out on Wager Talk. I'll be sharing out on my Twitter timeline as well. After we learn what we learn about that game, it'll be interesting to see how some lines move. If they don't move, it's time for us to pounce come Saturday night and early Sunday morning, hopping on some of those lines where you could have an Archers team who's locked in as a 4 seed. So what do they care? Why would they play their goalie? Why would they play Grant Ament and potentially risk injury? Same thing for the Whip Snakes, who have already battled through injury. I expect them to keep teams or keep their players in just because they have added a new player, Gutterding from the Chrome, who he's a terrific left-hander, one of the best players in the league. He's kind of struggled this year, so I expect Whip Snakes to kind of be a team, and we'll get into that coming up on Sunday's slate, kind of being a team who should keep players in regardless what the board says, just because they need to acclimate themselves to each other before the playoffs come. But I feel more confident looking at this 2-6 bowl, the bowl that nobody wants to be in between the Cannons and Chrome, simply because no matter what happens at the top of the board, it's winning in for either of these teams. So this is a game that they will already both be pumped up for. I think Chrome has kind of shown that they're kind of taking a back seat, but then this week, two of their veteran leaders came out and said, hey, we're retiring after this season. So I don't know if that was more just kind of waving the white flag or if that was to inject some life into that locker room. You'll find that out within the first quarter because, two guys come out and say they're going to retire. That could be looked at one of two ways. Does that mean that they're trying to give some juice to the team? Hey, let's win one for the Gipper. Or is it, all right, guys, this season didn't go how we wanted. Whatever happens on Sunday, at least we can hang our hats on a strong career. That will be able to be discerned rather early in this game, whereas the Cannons, they've been clawing all year long. Sure, they have 2 wins, but I think I mentioned this every time that we're on. The Cannons are your third best team against the spread. They're 5-3 against the number. However, they're favorites again. They have yet to cover as favorites. They are a perfect 5-0 against the spread when they are underdogs. When they're favorites, -1.5 point favorites, as they are in this game, they're 0-3. So small sample sizes on both of those, but small sample sizes is all that we have to work off of, as it's the Cannons' first year in the league. So while I maybe couldn't back them on the spread, even at an advantageous price of +105, lay in the 1.5, -145 earlier in the week, you were able to get that at -120. If you're able to shop around and get that closer to 130, I feel a little bit better about that than laying the 145. I also think this is a game where you could be seeing an over opportunity. Those are both going to be probably pizza money plays for me. I just can't back the Cannons against the spread because while I think they are going to win this game, they haven't covered yet. And the only games that they've won, Jeff, for what it's worth, are when they have been underdogs. So I'm staying off of any official plays in that one. But if you're looking for some Saturday action, I would lean with the Cannons on the money line. I would lean with that over. And the lean with the over just kind of goes back to what I was thinking, that this weekend, clearly you see all those 23.5s. There's a line in the sand saying defense will be the star. I just don't know if that happens, and that's why I lean towards that over, Jeff.
And what I like to tell everyone and anyone listening here, when the juice starts to get a little too steep, everyone is different. Some people don't mind the juice because as long as they're cashing the ticket, that's fine. What I also suggest is this is in your book, on your online app, wherever you're shopping and playing, there is what we call as a risk button. So if that juice gets a little high, just hit the risk button, play your normal wager. Hey, yeah, you win a little less, you profit a little less, but you're also risking a little less. And as we like to say here, Dan, is they all cash the same way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is I'm the kind of bettor who once it gets to about 150, it doesn't matter if it's a play that I love, I'm looking to talk myself out or looking to find a different way to attack that. Do you switch to a money line? Sure, you're not getting that 1.5, but last week we talked about the Archers and they were getting 1.5. It was their first ever underdog roll this season. And I was willing to pay minus 170 to get a team getting the 1.5 in advantageous position for them. They end up winning outright. So sure, I could have won more taking them on the money line, but it was a better EV play taking a team who's never been an underdog as an underdog. So it's a case by case situation. I don't think you can just broad brush and ever say, here's my betting philosophy. If you're doing that, if you're staying rigid, you have to be fluid in this industry. And I think this is one of the cases, because what I've learned about cannons, that I'm not willing to be as flexible about laying some juice. However, like I said, if you need any action, I'm the one who kind of says, just because a game's on TV, you don't need action. I think that's one of the worst things you can do if you want to be long-term profitable. So, this is just one of those that I don't need this play. You know what I mean? I'm already good on my lacrosse bets. I'm already fine with my percentage on the year. So I don't need to have action in this game, though there are looks that I think are advantageous. They're just not enticing enough to make it onto my card.
100% agree. I love when you preach like that. We had to do the same thing in baseball. The formulas that have been successful for the first 6 years didn't start out that well. So then what we had to do is not recreate the wheel, but we had to get a little more curious. So, started going to first fives. And when you get priced out of a game that you really see the edge, then what? Well, maybe go to the team total. What is the team total there? Dave Sharapan talked about it earlier this week. Go to that team total. Go to the under over. Maybe there is a spot there where the line is maybe plus 105, maybe minus 110 versus, digging into that minus 150 or 160, which you just talked about.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. And since we went a little long here today, Jeff, I'll run down our final part of the weekend here, and that's on Sunday. Again, this is nothing that I'll be pulling off the rubber band about. I'll feel a lot better betting these games, especially in the Whip Snakes Archers game, until after we see what happens in Water Dogs Atlas, the premier game of the weekend. If you want to watch a great lacrosse game, watch that Atlas Water Dogs game. Both of those teams are going to be up for it, and it's a great slate of games this weekend. Some of them going to be nationally broadcast as well. So, if you got nothing going on, a slow weekend, definitely check it out. The last look that I have is the Whip Snakes, and here's the thing: is the Whip Snakes have only been, they're 4-3, a great team, but against the spread, they're only 2-5. However, I talked about it, and you can find it on our Bet on Lacrosse Twitter and our Bet on Lacrosse show for this week, that the market perception going into the season was just way too much love for the Whip Snakes. And now you're seeing them in their final game as an underdog. They were underdogs once before. Funny enough, it was against the Archers. Funny enough, it was an outright win against the Archers. I don't know if that's going to happen again, but I think the Whip Snakes are live getting that 1.5 because of what I alluded to earlier. They're adding in a new player to the fold. So even whatever happens with Atlas and Water Dogs, even if the seeding is already laid out, I fully expect the Whip Snakes to try and get back to form this weekend and kind of use these. I mean, they're already signed, sealed, delivered. They're going to the playoffs. Use these two games to get this new player, Gutterding, acclimated into their offense, to return to form a little bit. So regardless what happens the rest of the weekend, I think the Whips are looking at this as a fine-tune opportunity. So when they're fine-tuning, they're good enough that they could beat people outright. I'll take the 1.5 with them. I think both of those offenses are live to go over another low total of 23.5, but those will not be official plays for me on my card until we find out what's happening Saturday with Atlas and the Water Dogs. The over I can't play, though I did sprinkle a little money on Whip Snakes, because if the Whip Snakes end up winning on Friday night against the Redwoods, you're going to be looking at a potential where that minus 120 is getting closer to like a minus 175, depending on what happens with Archers, depending on what happens with Whip Snakes. And whenever you have two games in one weekend, I never want to root for, I never want to hope for, I never want to see any injuries, but it is a thing to think about, that if there is an injury on Friday night, that line is going to change drastically. So as alluded to at the beginning of our segment, if you have an opinion, bet it now. Don't wait for the market to agree with you. And that's why I'm on the Whip Snakes plus 1.5 in the finale of the regular season.
Well, as you said a few minutes ago, because of the every other week or the 2 weeks, I mean, we could talk for hours. It's almost
That's
like we're
true.
playing catch up. Apologies. Again, it's just so fascinating. Your drive, your passion, your knowledge, what you bring to the table. This sport only in its third year, it's only going to get big and bigger. We can't thank you enough here at ECSI. We have learned so much, and we're just starting. Next week is the playoffs, I assume, correct?
Yeah. So we do have the playoffs coming up. We have a quarterfinals. We have a semifinals, which I will be in Philadelphia for. We have a championship game, which I will be in the District of Champions, like my guy Hutton Jackson likes to say. That'll be in D.C., so I'll be at all of those games. I'll be bringing you some live action. It's gonna be some fun opportunities, Jeff. And I will say, I wasn't complaining that we were going long. I'll talk to you for the next 3 hours. We're recording Cash Considerations today with Dave Sherapan, with Carl Haskell. We got Chris Abbott as our guest today. So, I just got to gear up for that a little bit. But, Jeff, you never have to apologize. I'm here for you, buddy. I love doing this. And like you said, I feel like when we finally get together, when we go to a Sox game together or something, I mean, people are just going to move. We'll have a circle around us that no one's sitting, because they'll be like, these two guys just don't shut the hell up. I mean, we could talk to each other about tiddlywinks, Jeff, and have a good time. So I love doing this, man. I love taking time out of the day. And as evidenced, we could easily go an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It doesn't matter, Jeff. I love doing this, man, and I have a blast with you every week. And even on the bye weeks, you know what I mean? I miss being here with you. So it all ends up working out.
In closing, stage is yours. Tell everyone where to find you, your podcasts, your shows, everything on social media, and we'll wrap it right there.
So you see the ticker at the bottom of the screen. We conveniently have, those are the about 5,000 places that you can find me. I have play-by-play and color commentary coming up for WEEU. I do high school sports for them. You can find all of what we do lacrosse-wise at Lax Playground. That's Lacrosse Playground. Follow the show at Bet on Lacrosse, and you can always find me at my page on Wager Talk, wt.buzz/DA. That's my page. We have packages up there. I give free plays all the time. So it's a great way to find all of what you're looking for. And the easiest way, you want to follow along the sweats, you want to see my food pictures, you just want to get a peek into what I do on a daily basis outside of the lacrosse side of things, you can follow me on Twitter right behind me at Newbie Talks. So always a pleasure, man. Love doing this, Jeff. And honestly, it feels like we talk for 5 minutes and then I look up and say, oh my God, I just took up Jeff's entire afternoon. So the time flies, buddy. I think that's indicative of the information we give out and the fun that we have, my man.
Listen, I'm just here. I'm following your lead. Like you said, we could talk for hours on hours on hours. From myself, Jeff Dawson at East Coast Sports Investors, to Dan, follow him. Any questions, reach out to him. He replies in like this. He's there. He's here to educate like us. Yes, we do entertain. We do have fun, but we're here also to educate and hopefully cash some tickets. He gave out some great free plays. Again, Saturday, 4:00 is where things could change and really shape up the rest of the weekend.
That's the game.
Follow him on his timeline. He could be, on the phone. Next thing you know, at 7:00, hey, jump on this, jump on this, jump on this before the market turns. So again, have a blast, cash some tickets. Always remember this: wager with your head, not your heart. If you have a problem, pick up that phone. There's an 800 number. There's plenty of people out there to help. We're here to have some fun and cash some tickets. So from myself and Dan, enjoy the lacrosse this weekend. The playoffs next week will be here. Back hopefully Wednesday at our same time. Dan, have an amazing birthday. We'll say you're 21 on tomorrow, and we'll leave it at that. And wish everyone the best of luck, and God willing, and have a blessed day.
Appreciate you, Jeff.